the human's room, and his silence. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Zira stood still, her body tense. Her thin arms were shaking. She looked around the small room, confused. It didn't look like a prison. There were no chains. No cold walls, no cameras, just warmth. A small bed with a soft blanket, a table with clean water and food, a towel, even soap. She didn't move. The human who bought her hadn't said much, just paid the slaver, took her hand gently, and led her away. His name was Callan. Middle-aged, strong but quiet. His face wasn't angry. It was calm. That made her more afraid. Kindness was often a trick. She had seen it before. Zira had sold herself to save her child. She begged the slavers to take her and leave her daughter. The deal was clear. She would be a slave, but her daughter would survive. She thought she'd be chained, hurt, used. But now she was in this strange warm room. No one yelled. No one touched her. The silence was heavy. The door opened again. Callan walked in slowly. He looked at her, then looked at the untouched food. "You haven't eaten," he said softly. Zira said nothing. Her alien eyes were wide with fear. She stepped back, ready to run, but there was nowhere to go. Callan raised his hands gently. "I won't hurt you." Still, she didn't answer. He walked over to the table, broke a piece of bread and took a bite. "It's not poisoned," he said with a small smile. "You need strength." She watched him carefully. His movements were slow. Not like the cruel traitors, not like the guards who kicked her when she fell. I will do what you want," Zira finally said. Her voice shook. "Just don't ask me to beg." Callan frowned. "I didn't buy you for that." She stared at him in disbelief. "Then, why?" He looked at her for a long moment. "I don't know," he said truthfully. "I saw you. Something felt wrong. Like, you didn't belong in chains." Zira couldn't believe it. A human saying such words? No one had ever spoken to her like that. Even among her own kind, she was nothing. "Sit," he said gently, pulling out a chair. She didn't move. He didn't push. He just placed a blanket on the bed and turned toward the door. "I'll be in the other room," he said. "Eat. Rest. We'll talk later." He walked out and left her alone. Zira slowly stepped forward, still cautious. She touched the blanket. It was soft. Real. She sat on the edge of the bed, unsure. She looked at the food. Her stomach was tight. She hadn't eaten properly in days. She grabbed a piece of bread and bit into it, still expecting something bad to happen. But nothing happened. Only warmth filled her belly. Hours passed. The stars outside the window glowed softly. Zira wrapped herself in the blanket and lay down, unable to sleep. Her eyes stayed open. She listened. No screams. No orders. No pain. Only silence. In the next room, Callan sat on the edge of his chair, rubbing his face. He didn't know what he was doing. He never planned to buy anyone. He was just passing through the market, looking for parts. Then he saw her, standing quietly, refusing to cry, refusing to kneel. The slaver slapped her, but she stayed strong. That's what made him stop. He had seen war, seen monsters. But something about that woman's eyes, so full of pain, yet still proud, made him act. He didn't need a servant. He didn't want a slave. He just couldn't leave her there. The next morning, Zira sat up quickly as the door opened. Callan walked in with a small bag. He placed it on the table. "I bought you clothes," he said. "Your size, I think." Zira blinked. "Clothes? Why?" she asked again. "Why are you doing this?" He looked at her. "Because you deserve better. I don't want anything from you. Just be safe here." She didn't understand it. She didn't trust it. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like dying. The sun hadn't even risen when Zira stood near the door, breathing heavily. She hadn't slept. She couldn't. Every heartbeat echoed like thunder in her ears. She clutched the small, tattered cloak she wore, its folds hiding something precious, something that no one had seen. Something she hadn't told the human. Her child, a little girl, no older than 5 Earth years, slept silently beneath the cloak, curled close to Zira's waist, hidden and trembling. Zira had done everything to keep her safe, sold her own body, taken every insult, endured every blow. But now, the girl was with her. Somehow, by miracle, no one had found her yet. But they would. Unless Zira moved fast. Callan was asleep in the other room, his breath steady, peaceful. Zira stared at the door. Again, could she slip out? Should she run? But where would they go? She looked down at her sleeping daughter. The child's cheeks were hollow. Her ribs showed through her pale alien skin. She needed food. She needed warmth. Zira's throat tightened. She couldn't keep hiding her. She had made a mistake coming here without telling the human. But how could she trust a man who bought her from a slave market? Still, he hadn't touched her, hadn't even raised his voice. He had offered her food, clothes, and he had looked at her with something she had never seen before, pity and respect. Zira closed her eyes and made a choice. Minutes later, Callan woke to the sound of a soft knock. He sat up, surprised. The sun had barely risen. He opened the door and froze. Zira stood there with her hands up, her face pale, eyes glassy. "I lied," she whispered. Callan frowned. Lied. Zira slowly pulled the cloak aside. And there she was, a little alien girl, sleepy and thin, her eyes large and afraid, clinging to her mother's leg. "This is my daughter," Zira said quietly. "I didn't tell you because I thought you'd send us back. Or sell her." Callan looked between them, at the terrified mother and the tiny girl staring up at him. He said nothing for a long time. Then he stepped forward and knelt to the child's level. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The girl blinked. She didn't speak. Zira looked down. "She hasn't spoken in weeks." Callan looked up. "Because of the slavers?" Zira nodded. Silence filled the space. Then Callan stood and opened the door wider. "Come in," he said softly. "Both of you." Zira hesitated. "But I was your purchase, not her." Callan met her gaze. "I didn't buy you to own you. I helped you because someone had to. And if she's yours, then she's part of this too." Zira's knees gave in. She dropped to the floor and sobbed, not from fear but from relief. Callan gave the girl some water and food. She took it carefully, still watching him like a wounded animal. Zira sat beside her, holding her hand. "I'll understand if you ask us to leave," Zira said after a while. "I was just trying to survive." Callan shook his head. "You think I've never seen desperation? I fought in the outer wars. I saw mothers starve themselves for their kids. You did what you had to." Zira stared at him. This human wasn't like the others. He didn't speak like a man who saw aliens as less. He spoke like a man who had seen too much, and who still chose kindness. Later that day, Zira tucked her daughter into a soft blanket Callan had brought. The child looked at the human. He smiled. She didn't smile back, but she didn't cry either, and that was something. That night, Zira stood near the window, watching the stars. Callan sat nearby, repairing a small broken alien toy he found in her daughter's cloak. "You didn't have to fix that," Zira said quietly. Callan shrugged. "Every child needs something of their own." He looked up. "You can stay here as long as you need. I don't have much, but I have peace." Zira turned to him. Her voice was small. "Why are you really doing this?" He paused, then said simply, "Because love isn't just romance. Sometimes love is making sure someone else eats before you do. Sometimes it's fixing a toy for a kid who won't talk." Zira felt something inside her break. and start to heal. The small apartment was quiet. Zyra stood in the corner holding her daughter close as the human man, Callan, quietly prepared food in the kitchen. The air smelled like warm bread and something sweet, something Zyra's child had never tasted before. The girl clutched her broken toy, the one Callan had fixed the night before. Its legs still wobbled, but it could stand now. Like her mother was learning to do again. Zyra still didn't trust what was happening. It was too soft, too kind, too strange. Kindness always had a price. But Callan hadn't asked for anything. Not even a thank you, and that terrified her more than anything else. That morning, Callan had done something that truly shocked her. He took them both. Outside. Not to a work camp, not to a trade post, but to a playground on top of the building. One, meant for alien children. It was small, old, and quiet. A few alien families glanced at them, then looked away. No one shouted. No one came close. Callan walked behind Zyra and her daughter, hands open, giving them space. Zyra looked around like it was a trap. "Why are we here?" Callan smiled gently. "Your daughter needs to laugh, you do too." She frowned. "She doesn't laugh anymore. Maybe today she will." At first, the little girl didn't move. She sat near a corner of the dusty play area, holding her toy tightly. Her big eyes watched the other children from behind her mother's legs. Zyra stood nearby, arms crossed, unsure what to do. Then Callan did something strange. He sat down in the sandbox like a fool and started building a crooked alien house out of wet sand. Children nearby stared. Some laughed. One pointed. "That human doesn't even know how to build." But Callan just smiled and waved them over. Zyra's daughter looked at him, then at the sand, then slowly, carefully. She took one small step forward, then another. Zyra's heart raced. The girl dropped to her knees beside him without a word and began adding little walls to his clumsy creation. Callan gave her a silly smile. "Now that's better." The girl didn't speak, but she didn't leave. An hour later, something impossible happened. The girl picked up a round stone and handed it to Callan. He pretended it was a spaceship and made it land dramatically on top of the sand house with silly noises. "Psst! Incoming alien princess landing." A sound came from the child. It was soft. Short, a giggle. Zyra blinked in disbelief. Her daughter, who hadn't spoken, laughed, or smiled since she was taken from their home, was giggling. She covered her mouth in shock. Callan looked up, smiling wide. "I told you, today might be the day." Later, as they walked home, the girl held Callan's hand. Zyra walked silently beside them, not knowing what to feel. She had seen humans destroy families, enslave planets, and laugh as people begged. But now she had seen something else. A human who earned her daughter's smile before even earning her trust. That night, Zyra sat beside the small sleeping mat, watching her daughter breathe peacefully. Callan brought over a folded piece of cloth. "I cleaned it," he said. "Her new blanket." Zyra took it with shaking hands. "She smiled," she whispered. Callan nodded. "She did." Zyra's voice cracked. "I thought she had forgotten how." "She didn't forget," Callan said. "She just needed someone to remind her." Zyra stood slowly and faced him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked again. "You bought me from a slave auction. You could have done anything. Why? Kindness." Callan looked her in the eye. "Because I don't believe in owning people," he said. "I believe in saving them when no one else will." Zyra stared at him for a long time. Then quietly she said, "She smiled today, but I didn't." Callan stepped closer. "You will. One day." He smiled gently. "And when that day comes, I want to be there to see it." Zyra returned to her daughter's side, tucking her in with the clean blanket. But as she did, the corners of her lips twitched, not a full smile, but something close. It started with a knock. No warning. No alarm. Just a cold, hard knock on the door, too loud to be friendly. Zira froze. She was in the middle of braiding her daughter's hair. Callan had gone to the lower market to get more food. She moved silently, pulling the little girl close and placing a hand over her mouth. Her heart pounded. The knock came again. Bang. 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 Then a voice, gruff and familiar. By order of the Trade Guild, open this door. We are reclaiming stolen property. Zyra's blood ran cold. They had found her, the slavers, the same traders who had sold her, who had laughed as she begged for her child. They had followed them here. She had known this peace was too good to last. With shaking hands, she pulled her daughter toward the storage closet. She opened the hidden compartment beneath the floorboards, a space Callan had carved out himself, just in case. Stay quiet, she whispered. No matter what happens, do not come out. The girl nodded once. Brave, just like her mother. Zira kissed her forehead and closed the hatch. Then she stood and turned toward the door. It was already being forced open. The door cracked with a loud snap as two alien enforcers pushed their way in, weapons drawn. Zyra stepped back, arms raised. She recognized the slaver behind them. Gorvax, a thick, cruel alien with a large scar across his neck. He smirked. Thought you could run? He sneered. Thought you could trick the guild? Zira didn't speak. Her eyes flicked to the weapon one guard held, a charged stun rod. Her body remembered the pain of it too well. You were sold, Gorvax continued, stepping forward. And that human of yours? He didn't file a freedom claim. That makes you still property. Zyra said nothing. She wouldn't give him the pleasure of her fear. Then, a sound behind them. Heavy footsteps. Fast. Angry. Callan. He stormed through the hallway, carrying nothing but his fists in fury, his eyes locked onto Gorvax. You're in my home. Callan said coldly. That's a mistake. Gorvax turned, laughing. Ah, the brave little human. This isn't Earth. You don't make the rules here. Callan didn't blink. She's not your property. Not anymore. She was never free, Gorvax shouted. You signed no release, no transfer. You bought her illegally. That makes her... I bought her to save her, Callan snapped, not to keep her. The guards raised their weapons. Zyra stepped between them, desperate. Please don't hurt him, take me, just leave him alone. But Callan didn't move back. His voice turned quiet. Dangerous. Touch her, and I'll bury every one of you. The first guard lunged forward. Too fast. A mistake. Callan sidestepped, grabbed the guard's wrist and slammed it into the wall. The weapon clattered to the ground. The guard howled in pain. The second raised a blaster. Zira screamed, thinking Callan would be shot, but then a hidden turret in the ceiling. A gift from one of Callan's war buddies locked onto the invaders. Drop it, Callan warned. Now. The blaster hit the floor. Gorvax growled, backing away. You'll regret this, human. You've made enemies in the guild, big ones. Callan stepped closer. And you just made one on Earth. Gorvax hesitated, then barked at his men to retreat. They left quickly, but not before delivering a final message. You better leave this city. She's marked now. You both are. As the door slammed shut, Zira collapsed to the floor, shaking. Callan turned and knelt beside her. Are you hurt? She looked up at him, tears in her eyes. You could have died. So could you, he said softly. That's why I came. Back. Zyra clutched his shirt tightly. They'll come again. I know. We should run. Leave the system. Disappear. But Callan didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood and walked to the hatch. He opened it gently. The little girl looked up at him, terrified. You're safe now, he whispered, lifting her out. She clung to his neck like he was her only lifeline. That night, none of them slept. Callan patched the door, checked the weapons, and sent encrypted messages to contacts he trusted. Zira sat near the window watching the dark sky. She spoke quietly. I didn't cry when they first took me. I didn't cry when they beat me. But today, when they almost hurt you, I couldn't breathe. Callan walked over and knelt in front of her. You're not my slave, he said. You're not my burden. He reached out and touched her hand, gently. You're my family now, and I protect what's mine. Zaira's eyes filled again. This time not with fear, but with something she hadn't felt in years. The night after the raid, Zaira didn't sleep. She lay on the soft floor mat beside her daughter, staring at the ceiling. The room was quiet. Too quiet. No sirens, no boots, no threats. But the silence now held something different. A question. What were they now? Not slaves. Not prisoners. Not exactly free either. Zaira turned her head and looked at Callan, who had fallen asleep in the chair across from them, arms crossed, still wearing his boots. He had stayed awake for hours, guarding the door like a soldier on duty. Why? Why go this far for a stranger? She didn't understand him. No one ever protected her before, not even her own people. In the morning, Callan woke with a start. His hand reached for the hidden blaster under the table before his brain reminded him, "You're safe now." He stood up and rubbed his eyes. Zaira's daughter was already awake, quietly playing with the patched-up toy. She still hadn't spoken. Not a word. Until now. As Callan passed by, she looked up and said it softly, like it was the most natural thing in the universe. "Papa." Callan froze. He slowly turned to face her. Zaira gasped. "What did you say?" The girl looked at Callan, then at her mother, then back. "Papa," she whispered again, like it was a truth she had always known. Zaira's eyes filled with tears. Her hands trembled. She hasn't spoken in so long," she whispered. Callan knelt beside the child, stunned. He didn't know what to say, so he said the only thing that felt right. "If you want me to be, then I will." The girl smiled, a real smile, then climbed into his arms. Zaira stood in the corner, her hand over her mouth. Something deep inside her broke wide open. She had spent years surviving, running, hiding. She had taught her daughter to trust no one, but now her child had chosen this man. Not because he was strong or rich or human, but because he was kind. Callan carried the girl like she was weightless, walking her around the small apartment. She laughed as he gently lifted her above his head. Zaira watched in awe. This was not how she imagined her life after slavery. But this was better than any dream she had dared to have. Later, Zaira sat across from Callan at the table while the girl napped nearby. "You don't have to accept that," she said, her voice low. "Being called Papa, it's not your burden." Callan looked up at her. "It's not a burden," he replied. "It's an honor." Zaira blinked. "Most people would have laughed," she said, "or rejected it." "I'm not most people," Callan said. He leaned forward. "You said she hadn't smiled, hadn't spoken, but today she did both. Not because of me, but because she felt safe." He paused. "With me." Zaira didn't know what to say. So Callan continued. "I may not be her real father, but if she gives me that name, I will earn it. Every day." That night, Zaira stepped outside onto the small balcony. The stars above looked different. For the first time, they didn't look like cold lights in a cruel universe. They looked like promises. Callan joined her, holding 2 cups of warm tea. "I think I'm ready," Zaira said softly. "For what?" Callan asked. "To stop running," she answered. "To stop hiding. Maybe even to start living." Callan nodded. "Then let's live." He offered her a cup. She took it. Their hands touched briefly, and for the first time in her life, Zaira didn't flinch. Zaira stood at the mirror, holding a dress in her hands. It wasn't made of silk or jewels. It was simple, earth-made, blue cotton, but it was clean, soft, and hers. She had never owned clothes before, not truly. As a slave, she was only allowed rags. Now she was free to wear what she liked. But still, she hesitated. She wasn't used to freedom, and she wasn't sure she deserved it. In the next room, Callan was showing her daughter how to make Earth-style pancakes. She giggled as flour dusted his nose. He didn't care. He just smiled and kept going, flipping the pancakes with a spoon because he didn't have a proper spatula. Zira peeked through the doorway. That image, a war-scarred human making food for her daughter like a silly uncle, would have been unthinkable a month ago. Now it felt real and dangerous, because the more real it felt, the more afraid she became of losing it. After breakfast, Callan set down his plate and looked at her seriously. "I've been thinking," he said. Zira stiffened. That was never a good sign. "I want to file a formal protection claim," he continued, "for you and your daughter." Zira blinked. "Protection? What does that mean?" "It means I go to the council and tell them I accept full responsibility. You get Earth citizenship. No one can touch you again. Not slavers, not traders, not even the guild." She shook her head quickly. "That's too much. You'd be marked. Watched." "I already am," Callan said. "They threatened me when they left. But that was because of me." "No," he said firmly. "That was because they're afraid of humans who care." Zira didn't speak for a long time. Then she said quietly, "If you do this, you're not just saving me. You're tying your life to mine." Callan looked her in the eyes. "I know." She stood there trembling. No one had ever asked her what she wanted. No one had ever offered her a choice. That night, Zira sat by the window again. Her daughter was asleep, holding the toy Callan had fixed. Callan stepped beside her, holding a piece of folded paper. "It's done," he said. "I filed it." She stared at him. "You didn't even wait for me to agree?" He smiled softly. "I didn't have to." Zira frowned. "What makes you so sure?" "Because the way you look at me," Callan said, "it changed. You stopped looking like you were planning to run." Zira didn't argue, because he was right. Then Callan did something that made her heart stop. He dropped to one knee, not like a servant, but like a man making a promise. From his pocket, he pulled out a simple ring, silver, shaped like a small planet, with a tiny star on top. "I know we come from different worlds," he said, "but your daughter already calls me Papa, and I think you're already my home." Zira's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not ready for marriage," she whispered. "I don't even know how to love like humans do." Callan smiled. "Then let's figure it out together." He didn't press the ring into her hand, he placed it on the table. "A promise, not a chain. You can say no, you can say not yet. But you'll never be alone again." Zira didn't move. She didn't cry. She just reached out and held his hand. "I won't say no," she whispered. "I just need time to say yes." Callan nodded. "That's all I need." The stars outside the window blinked slowly. Calm. Endless. For the first time in her life, Zira wasn't looking at them with fear. She was thinking of the future, and it didn't look dark anymore. The stars outside the station shimmered like frozen sparks in the void. Zira stood by the glass wall, her fingers brushing the edge of the ring Callan had given her. The small silver band still sat untouched in its wooden box. It wasn't fear that stopped her from wearing it. It was the weight of meaning. She hadn't been free long, not long enough to feel like she truly belonged to herself. But now, someone wanted her not as property, but as a partner. Behind her, Callan's soft footsteps echoed on the floor. "You okay?" he asked. Zira didn't turn. "She's asleep, hugging your pillow again." Callan smiled. "She keeps calling it Papa, pillow. I think it's permanent now." Zira finally turned to face him. He looked tired, but not from work, from waiting, from holding back. They had lived together for nearly 2 moons now, not as lovers, not as strangers, but as a strange, growing family still. Something had shifted, and they both knew it. The station was preparing for evacuation week. a planet-wide safety drill where residents would simulate a full-scale crisis. Callan had signed them up for a temporary shelter placement, just in case. Zira had asked, "Why bother?" He had answered simply, "Because now I have 2 people to protect." That word, have, echoed in her chest. Not own, not keep. Have as in hold close. The drill began at dawn. Red lights blinked slowly through the hallway. Simulation in progress was displayed in every language. Callan grabbed their emergency bag and reached for Zira's hand. To his surprise, she took it without hesitation. Her daughter held onto her other side, clutching the fixed toy. They walked together through the crowd, a mismatched family of alien and human. But no one questioned it. Inside the safe zone bunker, people were laughing, eating snacks, and treating it like a holiday. But Zira didn't feel calm. Something felt wrong. The air was too cold. The door to the main hall hadn't sealed properly. A strange static buzz filled the background. Callan noticed it too. He turned to her. "Wait here. I'm going to check the main console." "Don't go far," she said quickly. He gave her a wink. "I always come back." But he didn't. Not right away. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Zira started to panic. She left her daughter with a trusted worker and slipped into the hallway, just in time to see 3 masked alien mercenaries dragging Callan down the corridor. Her blood turned to ice. This wasn't a drill. She didn't think. She ran. Silent as a shadow, fast as breath, she followed them down to the old freight bay. Heart pounding, mind racing, she ducked behind crates, listening. "He's the one who filed the protection claim," one mercenary growled. "The guild wants him as a warning." "No. More humans interfering. Should we kill him here?" the other asked. "No," said the third. "We'll send his body to Earth. Let them fear us again." Zira's fists clenched. She had been hunted, owned, chained. But never, never had she let someone take her child's protector, her protector. She leapt from behind the crates with a cry like a storm. She wasn't trained, she wasn't armed, but she fought like someone with nothing left to lose. She kicked the blaster from the first mercenary's hands. It slid under a console. She grabbed a heavy pipe and swung hard. The second mercenary dropped. The third aimed a stun gun at her, snarling. Then Callan headbutted him from behind, breaking the hold they had on him. He turned, bruised but grinning. "You followed me?" "I chose you," Zira said breathlessly, swinging the pipe again. Together they fought off the last mercenary. Alarms began blaring for real now. Station guards poured in, arresting the attackers. Later, in the medical wing, Callan winced as the doctor cleaned his bruises. Zira stood nearby, arms crossed. "You didn't wait for me to rescue you," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "You didn't wait to get captured." He smiled. Then, slowly, she pulled out the ring box. She opened it and placed the ring on her own finger. "I'm not saying yes because you saved me," she said. "I'm saying yes because you let me save you back." Callan stared, stunned. She stepped forward and kissed his forehead gently. "You bought me to free me," she whispered. "Now let me choose to be yours." The wedding wasn't grand, just a small room on the station, a few friends, a few curious onlookers. Her daughter walked ahead, holding a little bouquet made of station-grown flowers. Zira wore a long white robe stitched by hand. Callan wore his old Earth uniform jacket, cleaned and repaired. When the official asked for vows, Zira spoke first. "I was nothing. You treated me like someone. I had no home. You gave me one. I didn't believe in love, until your love asked nothing in return." Callan's voice broke slightly as he said, "You were sold. You were forgotten. But you stood taller than anyone I've ever met. You're not my property. You're my family, my heart." The little girl clapped loudly, then laughed. Everyone laughed with her. That night, after everyone had left, Zira and Callan sat under the stars on the roof of the station. The child had fallen asleep curled between them. Callan looked up and asked, "Do you still want to run?" Zira leaned her head on his shoulder. "No, she said softly. I finally have something worth staying for. He kissed her hand. The ring gleamed in the starlight. And for the first time in her life, Zaira felt truly owned by no one, except love.